This Brook flashback has changed One Piece forever, because not only is he about to get a massive power up, but the Straw Hats as a whole are about to level up to face Imu in the final war. In fact, Oda has already given us Brook's final opponent, a Gorosei himself. And if you're wondering how can Brook handle such a busted opponent, well, after dealing with this Gunko situation, he is about to activate his true Captain Brook awakening powers from his younger days. Because this man was a one-man army in the Esperia War. As after joining the upper echelons of Esperia, Reuven tasks Candle to properly train Brook, not just in the art of the sword, but also of etiquette and proper manners, especially since he is living in the royal palace now. This interaction between Brook and Candle contextualizes his relationship with her and her daughter later on, as it's similar to Brook training Shuri 17 years later. Even as an 11-year-old kid, Brook's eyes were veering towards the baddies in the courtyard. When Candle snaps at him, he woos her, replying that Candle is actually the #1 beauty of them all in Esperia, especially since she was one of his saviors. But then we get a glimpse at the Brook we know in the present when Bro walks up to one of the ladies and asks her, "Pantsu wo misete?" Bro, what is One Piece about? Now, don't take this panel as a mere joke though, as Oda has hidden something profound in the wording. Brook throughout One Piece says "Pantsu wo misete kudasai," but in this flashback he simply says "Pantsu wo misete." The difference between these two are astronomical. Adding the kudasai makes the phrase more polite and respectful. Oda doing this is genius, as it finally tells us that Candle was the one who taught Brook to ask a woman to show their panties respectfully.
Are you serious right now, bro?
Bro, what is One Piece even about, man? We're in the middle of a war against Imu, bro. What are we doing, Oda? Okay, jokes aside, Brook learns a lot from Candle, as we move on to him enrolling into music school, where he doesn't want to have his music and vibes be overly influenced by what the school teaches as the correct way of doing music. However, one institution he does want to belong in is the battle convoy headed by his dear Candle, who is also his personal sensei. As they train and spend time together, Brook wonders if she has a man she likes. Candle does, but he is far from her reach. So for now, she will stay by his side as much as possible. Love for this man is one of the reasons she even trains with her sword every day. To which Brook thinks that she is talking about him and acts extra rude, suggesting she should dress like a woman to impress this man. Candle smacks our boy in the head, teaching him how to act tactfully, and explains that strength and politeness must go hand in hand. As the flashback within a flashback ends of Brook telling Shuri his story, he likens Lady Candle to the sun that shines over the nation. Keep this in mind, because this single sentence unlocks the true origins of Gunko, because Brook further elaborates that between the 2 years of Shuri being born and him becoming Candle's attendant, a world government ship showed up in Esperia. The kingdom was thrown into chaos as no one knew how to deal with celestial dragons. One wrong move and a navy admiral could show up and destroy your entire kingdom. I guess having dealt with this pressure is why Brook was the most shocked upon seeing Kizaru in Sabaody. Now, Brook suggests that Candle got sick due to the intensity of her job. In fact, she got bedridden for a few months after the Celestials left cause of the stress, where the entire nation felt dark. It was really like the sun set on Esperia. At the same time, Prince Reuven ascended the throne and promptly married Candle, who gave birth to Shuri, whose father isn't Reuven. Huh? all of this happens within 2 years of Brook moving to the castle. The timeline gets squeezed even more when we factor in the 9 months it takes for a child to be born. This very chapter, we are shown that Candle has a crush on Reuven, yet doesn't see a path towards a relationship. If we consider the actions of the Celestials throughout the story of them just waltzing into kingdoms and taking everything and anyone they want, things start to make more sense. Thinking about Soul King Brook farming aura in One Piece makes me want to do the same. And thanks to Blizzard Entertainment sponsoring this video, I have been playing Diablo Immortal. If you want to instantly live out a power fantasy, check out this game out on iOS or Android. It drops you in a dark, gritty world filled with demons and monsters where you must unleash your abilities and take down waves of enemies. This game is honestly really easy to pick up even if you have never played a Diablo game before. Plus, it's free to play, so no harm in checking it out. Pick a class you like, do some quests, and you can even get some friends together to run dungeons. So what are you waiting for? Use the code ZergRush to score yourself a massive starter drop legendary gear and gems. Click the link in the description, and thanks to Blizzard Entertainment for sponsoring this segment. I think the real story during these 2 years is that Candle, who was a renowned beauty of the West Blue, got R-worded by a celestial or even a holy knight who visited Esperia. Her few months of bedridden absence is likely when Shuri was given birth. Candle couldn't refuse the celestials as the entire kingdom could be destroyed. Instead, King Reuven, driven by guilt that Candle, the one he loves as well, had to take on such a burden, decided to marry her and chose to treat Shuri as his own daughter. That's why the two got married so quickly after the celestial left. This is similar to how Kuma and Bonnie are father and daughter. At this time, Brook was a 12-year-old attendant in training. When it comes to the intricate events of the kingdom and castle, I don't think he is a reliable narrator here, because all the hints point to King Reuven not being Shuri's biological father. The first time we even see Reuven is him getting annoyed that Shuri says fatherly things to Brook instead of him. Even in this chapter, when Shuri is riding on Brook's shoulder like a little girl with her father, King Reuven corrects her to call him father instead of daddy. Brook even says that after Shuri's birth, everyone said that she takes after her mother, because honestly, she has 0 traits that link her back to Reuven. Brook looks more like Reuven than his own daughter. After this little story time for Shuri, we get back to training, while we see a montage of Brook and Shuri hanging out around Esperia. Shuri is aged 14 now, and is kinda going through her teenage rebellious phase where she wants more freedom from her parents, so Brook sings her a song called Y'all Better Buzz Off, which captures her spirit. It's also in a dialect which is found in the west of West Blue, a kingdom named Kamigata. Maybe this is the true homeland of Brook's, and he just got left in Esperia as an orphan by his parents. However, we shouldn't forget that this is still a One Piece flashback. So Oda hits us with a, on her 15th birthday, the music died in Esperia. A thick fog shrouded the country and lingered for half a year. All the instruments decayed in this smog. Music was the real export of Esperia's economy through their renowned instruments. This fog sucked the life out of the soul of Esperia. Instead of songs, you only heard coughing. Even Brook, with his decayed guitar, couldn't uplift the people with Good Mermaid. This fog was brutal, as it also took away Esperia's son, Queen Candle. So even when the fog went away, the scars remained. The biggest of these scars came in the form of the heavenly tribute, which after such a devastating year, Esperia couldn't pay. There was no empathy or understanding from the Celestials or the world government. Either Esperia pays their tribute or they are kicked out of the world government, which means pirates will ravage the country, likely nudged there by the government itself, similar to Whitebeard's nation. The only decent news here is that Shuri has gotten much stronger training with Brook. In fact, she shows a real aptitude for observation haki, even using future sight unknowingly. She is motivated by wanting to become strong just like her mother Candle, while Brook, since his younger days, wanted to become a pirate after he felt that his debt to King Reuven and Esperia was repaid. However, Esperia has run out of time. King Reuven has already realized this. He knows how deadly the Celestials and the world government can be, especially since their visit 16 years ago. The only option left is to go on a losing war against the world government. Brook happily accepts the declaration, knowing full well that this means death. The entire convoy is confused as they wonder what the reason could be for such a dire decision. Well, the Celestials demanded 1,000 slaves in place of the heavenly tribute for Esperia to be spared. Slavery in the Holy Land is a fate worse than death. King Reuven could never allow his citizens to face such a hellish reality, so he chooses to fight instead of giving human sacrifices to the devil. In this dire time, Brook uses music to try and uplift the people's spirit, even with his decayed, broken guitar. There are stories of nations who, although not affiliated with the world government, still survive due to their strength, like the home of the samurais or the giants of Elbaf. The battle convoy must be like a bee that stings the world government so that they won't come near the hive. This power of music is perhaps one of the main reasons Esperia is being targeted, as with a strong-willed king like Reuven, he could sway the reverie's conversations to topics Imu and the Celestials don't like. In oppressive regimes, freedom of expression is only allowed the correct way, the way the state sees fit. With the son of the kingdom Candle gone, there is nothing left to lose in Brook's eyes, and his song motivates the entire kingdom to battle. As "Y'all Better Buzz Off" is humming in the back of the battle convoy's mind. This is an epic moment for Brook. Like, bro is fighting off hordes of marines, commanding a whole army against government forces. Like, we have never seen Brook this OP. And this feat during the flashback has many in the community calling Brook's story a retcon. It's almost like Esperia Brook is way more powerful than the Brook we met in Thriller Bark, who was losing to Corpse Ryuma. As a 20-year-old, bro used an attack that cut several men, but the effects didn't apply until hours later when they finally realized that they had been cut. This is a caliber of swordsmanship that goes well beyond the stuff Zoro showed until after he learned the Breath of All Things. In fact, Brook, during this war, is fighting off hordes of marines working directly under the world government. So these aren't just your run-of-the-mill fodders. There are likely even haki users amongst them. Not to mention, Brook doesn't have his revive fruit or Soul King powers of the underworld yet. This is a pure, raw swordsmanship, which makes me wonder if there is something weird going on with Brook's memories when it comes to his life before the Rumbar pirates. Especially since he outright blames Shuri for killing her father when we can clearly see her with devil horns being possessed. Only now in the present, when these buried memories of the past are being poked at with Gunko's appearance, that the former Brook is being reawakened. In One Piece, music is treated as a vessel for memories that the world tries to erase. Being sake has long outlived the Void Century, one of the only things that still carry on that will other than the poneglyphs. Even the drums of liberation or the Nika dance's rhythm preserves the memory of freedom and joy across the 3 ages. Even Big Mom, whose tragic memories of her eating her friends and Mother Caramel crack in through some of her songs, which she sings while in the midst of her eating disorder caused by her trauma as a child. And I don't think it was a coincidence that Big Mom is one of the only characters in One Piece who suffered from amnesia in Wano. Perhaps Brook, not just through this one traumatic event, but also being lonely in Thriller Bark for 50 years, has buried the explicit memories of the events in Esperia, instead holding on to them subconsciously through music, which keeps the soul of Esperia alive. Young Brook is highly trained. He says that he doesn't mind wearing the uniform of the battle convoy, even though he rejects the uniform of the Music Institute, which would shackle him. When it came to combat, he became a serious, rigid fighter. Oda shows this through Brook's shadow in Thriller Bark, which actually holds the missing piece to the current flashback. This is not a retcon. People just don't know how to read One Piece, bro. Shadows implanted into a zombie retains the original owner's personality, techniques, and combat reflexes. However, while a shadow carries the skills of the host, it is stripped of the host's psychological baggage and coping mechanisms once it enters a new body. Zombie Ryuma possessed Brook's exact fencing style, but he fought with devastating lethal precision like a knight of the battle convoy. That's why Brook could never defeat him. Brook keeps on noting that during his fight with Ryuma that the zombie was maximizing the lethal potential of his fencing style in a way he himself couldn't do. He thinks that it's just because Brook is a skeleton and doesn't have muscles, but it's all in the technique. Ryuma was fighting exactly how Commander of the Esperia Guard would have fought. With the Esperia flashback, the entire Brook fighting his shadow is recontextualized, as now it reads as Brook fighting against his past as the Knight of Esperia, trying to overcome it, which he couldn't do. Zoro was the one who defeated Ryuma eventually. Current Brook is fractured. He subconsciously holds back his raw lethal swordsmanship because the level of serious deadly combat is linked to Kando's teachings and the trauma of watching Esperia burn. Right now, he's fighting as Soul King Brook, not Captain Brook of Esperia. There was a reason Ryuma protected Brook's afro as well, as without the afro, Laboon couldn't recognize him. This was the one promise which Brook wanted to keep. It was an anchor that kept his mind sane in the fogs of Thriller Bark, because Brook couldn't keep the promise of laying down his life to protect Shuri, Reuven, or Kando, whom he promises in this chapter that he would. They all died while he survived. That's why the promise to Laboon is also so much more important now to Brook after the Esperia flashback. Now that Brook is having to face his true past from Esperia through Gunko, he will come out even stronger, merging the devastating power we saw his Shadow showcase or Captain Brook showcase in Ryuma's body with his Soul King fluidity. This will cause Brook to shoot up in power, becoming strong enough to stand against a Gorosei in the final war, who this chapter is revealed to be Brook's biggest op. Because after the Marine forces breach the palace, Brook charges from the coast of the kingdom through the now destroyed junkyard, his former home, to the burning gardens he and Shuri walked and sang at. Everything he knew and held dear is being destroyed, and the scene when he reaches the throne room is even more tragic, as Shuri has killed her own father, Reuven, with a literal demon standing next to her. Now, those of you with the notification bell on already knew all of this, but what we didn't know, that a freaking Gorosei came to Esperia, with the silhouette looking awfully like the bird of Saint Marcus Mars. Now, why would a Gorosei need to come to Esperia to deal with them? Wouldn't a few holy knights be enough? In fact, the kingdom got cooked by just the Marine forces. Well, this just proves the importance of Shuri, the one Imu has kept by his side for over 56 years. Not even the Gorosei are seen in the flower room with the Great One, just Gunko. Which brings me back to my theory of her father being a celestial, likely from the Manmayar family, whom she joins later. With how inbred the lineage factors of the celestials likely is, purebred celestials might not ever reach the strength required to climb the ranks of the holy knights. That's why we have half-breeds becoming the most powerful knights. Just look at the mixed races in the God Valley flashback. One of them has horns, the other is just wearing a whole ass mask. Even the Manmayar Knight doesn't look like your typical human. So when a celestial showed up and R-worded Candle, a beautiful, strong female knight, some kind of prerequisite for Imu was met, especially considering Gunko's heterochromia, which we have only seen with the likes of Hakuba, who has two distinct personalities within him of Cavendish. This is also part of Brook's prediction for the three types of Gunkos in chapter 1183. Reuven and Candle, knowing that if word of Candle's pregnancy got out with her child having celestial lineage, it would likely mean her and Shuri would be taken to the Holy Land. So Reuven married her, raising Shuri as his own daughter. This lineage is likely also why Shuri shows aptitude with future sight in her battle with Brook. However, the government found out the treachery. Saint Marcus Mars, the warrior god of environment, caused the devastating fog of Esperia. Like, what kind of natural fog literally destroys musical instruments, bruh? This is some artificial thing. Similar to how Saturn, the warrior god of science, caused the sapphire disease on Bonnie, Mars did the same with his Itsumade powers. Like, when you look at the lore for this yokai that he is based on, this becomes way more obvious. We don't even need to argue over the silhouette. Itsumade takes shape on top of battlefields as it represents the culmination of suffering and dread of those dying. Its name itself comes from the Japanese word Itsumademo, meaning until when. In traditional Japanese folklore, the Itsumade shows up in the 14th century Teiheki. It is an eerie, chimera-like bird that appears in the night sky during times of great calamity, specifically devastating epidemics and plagues. Historically, widespread plagues and epidemics were often believed to be caused by the miasma, toxic deadly fogs or smogs, or I guess bad air, which is what happened to Esperia, likely an act of punishment and manipulation by the world government to seize Shuri and destroy this nation, which could flourish into something more troublesome and rebellious in the future. Furthermore, there's one more man we need to discuss. This dude smoking a blunt in the back who looks a lot like Shiryu. However, this can't be possible as Shiryu wouldn't be born for another 16 years. And I don't think this is a Navy admiral or even Kong, who would have been the fleet admiral back then, because look at his clothing, like he's clearly wearing something that resembles a God's Knight's uniform rather than a Marine admiral's coat. Instead, this is most likely a former Holy Knight, perhaps the celestial who R-worded Candle and became Shuri's biological father. Maybe he's the previous holder of Smoker's fruit. Also, another thing of note is that a Gorosei being present for the Domi Reversi of Reuven and Shuri also proves that Imu himself needs to manifest in the body of a deep sea covenant marked individual to Domi Reversi people. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to check out Diablo Immortal with the link in the description, and thank you to Blizzard Entertainment for sponsoring this video. Please check out Diablo Immortal. Thank you.